leaked yesterday. And I've been thinking, Roland, why was it leaked by an extremist? Because I think what they want us to do is just only focus on the Roe piece without understanding this. Just like people are in the streets, and I'm out there too over this attack on Roe. But we got to get to the point where we're also out there the same way when they're taking voting rights, and the same way when they're blocking living wages. Because what the extremists are saying is, we're going to take your voting rights, we're going to take your living wages, we're going to take your health care, we're going to take your right to choose, we're going to take gay people's right to love who they want to, and we're going to take all the tax money we can and give it back to all the wealthy folk we can, and we're going to dare you to say anything. And what got to happen in this moment, what just happened yesterday, has to continue to birth unified movements, moral fusion movement. I was just on the call today where poor and low-wealth women, working women and low-wage women, who some of them were raped and otherwise and had abortions, are going to be coming on June 18th, not just to talk about the Roe issue and why we have to fight, but why, if you're really going to fight to uphold Roe, you better fight to expand voting rights, because that's how the people who cut Roe get in office or get on the court in the first place. Roland, that's the key. And I like the way you position, going back to those two in the Wall Street Journal. On the one hand, you got a company having to raise people's wages. Why? Because there's a fight going on. You also have that company trying to play a trick and say, we'll raise your wages if you quit fighting for the union. But then you also have the other headlines saying we've got all these open jobs. But people are saying, well, they're open jobs, but so many of them are open part-time and low-wage jobs that are really immoral, because people should not work 40 and 50 hours a week and still not be able to make a decent living.
Pam, you've been out there. Just share for the folks who are watching and listening. Share with them what you're hearing in living rooms, when you're on the phones, and you're talking to folks who are black, who are white, who are Latino, who are Asian. It don't matter, but they're in economic dire straits. What are they saying to you? What are y'all talking about?
The struggles, how hard it is, and how to get things changed, how to get things better. And I hear a lot of times, well, my vote don't count. It don't do no good. It don't do no good. They're going to do what they want to do. And my answer to them is, yes, your vote does count, because your vote makes my vote count. My vote and our vote makes that one's vote count. It makes the next one's vote count. All of us together, we're a mighty voice, and we are going to make change. For us, we're trying to figure out how to take and afford new tires for the next seasons, how to get our kids. And we see this, that instead of trying to help us, this going back to normal is being taken away from us. You know, it's taken more away from us. And the pandemic's not gone. It's not back to normal.
That's right.
You know, in our state and in other states, this virus, we've got cases going up. So, you know, trying to act like things are just hunky-dory, and that's what they want us to believe here in West Virginia. Oh, wild and wonderful, almost heaven. Well, let me tell you what, in West Virginia, it's far from almost heaven. And there is 710,000 of us poor, low-wage workers in West Virginia that can testify to that. You know, 140 million of us in the country. So, you know, we're talking about how we can move forward and make things better.
Yeah.
Reverend Barber, I'm going to ask you this question before I actually go to my before I go to my panel for the questions. So panel, get ready for your question here. The thing that is interesting is you have President Biden at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, naturally joking about his poll numbers. You've got Democratic strategists who are predicting doom and gloom. Oh my God, we're going to lose. You just heard Pam say 140 million low-wage workers. Well, maybe if they stop trying to flip suburban conservative white women and focus on speaking to the needs of low-wage workers, they will be talking about landslides in November as opposed to a tsunami of them losing.
Roland, you and I talk so much about, I'm so sick of these pundits that just go ahead and just decide what has happened. They don't even look at the data. Poor and low wealth people make up 32% of the electorate. In battleground states, 45%. In West Virginia, poor and low wealth people didn't vote against their own interests. A lot of them just stopped voting. If they had an inspiring agenda and candidates, they would vote. But now they're saying we don't even have to be inspired. We're going to vote for our own lives. You're talking about in 15 states, battleground states, it would only take a maximum of 20% of poor and low wealth voters that already are registered to be mobilized around an agenda that could secure the Senate, the presidency, and governor's races. In most of those states... Hold on, you said 20% of those already registered. Already registered. I'm not talking about already registered, already eligible, or who just haven't voted. And in most of those states, it's under that. Like, we have numbers that show a 1% increase in Michigan, a 7% increase in Georgia, 4% increase in Florida, 19% increase in North Carolina could overcome any past margin of victory. But the pundits and the politicians, they don't even talk to poor and low wealth people. They don't even say their name. That's why June 18th, we're saying we're not going to be unheard and unseen anymore. And then they got to have the agenda to talk to folk. What are we talking about? If we would push an agenda that centers and prioritizes the poor, the 140 million, push an agenda that says we're going to secure the human rights to democracy, equal protection under law, secure the right for adequate standard of living and living wages, secure the right for work with dignity, secure the right for health care for all, housing, the rights to food and water and broadband and public utilities, the right to education, the right to comprehensive just immigration, the right to indigenous people and First Nation peoples having their rights, the right to a robust climate agenda, the right to enact taxation on the ultra-rich and corporation Wall Street and forgiving student debts, and the right to prepare and then to prioritize peace, diplomacy, and nuclear non-proliferation. And then if we would repair the social and economic injustices through what we have to do through reparations for people who've been traditionally and historically undermined and oppressed. That kind of an agenda with real policies and a willingness to fight for it. But what we have instead is we've got folk, you get one vote on voting rights and they just hide. One vote on living wages and they quit. But what's happening now is poor and low wealth folk are saying, y'all might quit, but we aren't going to quit. And that's why we're mobilizing for this mass Poor People's Low Wage Workers Assembly, Moral March on Washington, and to the polls, because what we are going to have to do, just like we do with these business leaders, they're going to have to feel and see the power of poor and low wealth people. And Roland, it is not a big lift. But the problem is the pundits and the politicians, Republicans too often say poverty is the issue of people's personal morality. And for some reason, so many Democrats can't even say the word poor or low wealth. They just say those trying to make it into the middle class. And they talk more like Reagan Democrats rather than Democrats who are serious about reviving the heart and soul of this country. But it's not a heavy lift. And we have to, Roland, we're not loud and wrong. I want your audience to go read our report called Waking the Sleeping Giant. We did a serious analysis with Columbia University and Howard University and on several things. And I'm telling you, the numbers are there. Poor and low wealth people are the sleeping giant in this country.
Questions from the panel. Mustafa, you first.
Reverend Barber and Pam, it's good to see you. On June 19th, after we all come together on June 18th, what's the marching orders moving forward?
that you asked that question, because first of all, on June 18th, it's going to be something more than just a coming together. It's going to be very different. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be people coming to speak for folk. America hasn't seen people like Pam from West Virginia standing with a sister from Alabama. And they're not going to just be crying. They're not going to just be crying. Does my camera go out?
No, you're good. You're good.
Okay. They're not just going to be crying. They're going to be laying out their pain, their stories, and then making demand. So first of all, my brother, on the 9th, America will be real clear of what we want and what we're going to fight for. Number two, we're saying after the 18th, and we've laid out what the problem is, what the demands are, all acts of nonviolent actions to make it happen are on the table. All of them, from nonviolent actions of sit-ins to voting, to marching, to pushing, to organizing. Then secondly, we're going to have the whole summer to mobilize this 32% of the electorate, a significant portion of it, and this 45% in battleground states. That's because our purpose of this march is to shift the moral narrative, to put before the nation a clear third Reconstruction agenda, and to build political power, and then to exercise that power in a way in the midterm that says you will never, never, never ignore us again. And then fifthly, to use whatever tactics we have across the country. Because what you should know is we have 42 states now organizing. 42 states, 2,500 clergy, 147 organizations, and 20 different denominational groups that are saying it's time for all of us to come together. Lastly, because the folk that are against voting rights and against women's rights and against living wages and against union rights are the same people. And if they are cynical, mean enough to be together, we better be smart enough to come together.
Teresa.
Reverend Barber, thank you so much for your continued activism. Outside of June 18th, is there something else that we can do? One, I would love to hear, the story of this young woman who, has been through the struggle, because I do think that also sets another image. Yeah. It's not just happening to Black and brown people, it's happening to us all, and bring this as a unity conversation. So what else can we do if we cannot join you on June 18th?
If you cannot join us, tell everybody you know within a radius of a mile that they can. If you cannot join us, have listening parties and watch, not parties, but watch gatherings, because you're going to hear all those stories. You're going to hear a sister who lost 25 family members in a 30-mile radius because the way we did not care for poor, low-wealth people during this pandemic. But she's saying, I'm not going to quit. I'm here to fight now for real. I'm fighting in the name of all my family members who died. If you go sign up, Poor People's Campaign, make sure you sign up to our Action Network. We now have over 400,000 people that are Poor People Campaign activists. They say, call us, we come. Call us, we move in state after state after state. And then send it. The other thing is, my sister, all of these studies, because what we get lied to so much in this country, and so many blinders on stuff. So what we've done is we've done studies to make sure that folk understand, because I'm convinced sometimes the reason why people aren't moving, because they don't know how bad it is. Like, nobody was telling us. The government didn't even keep the record on how poor and low-wealth people were faring through the pandemic. We had to go out and find it. And when we found it, our worst fears were realized that poor and low-wealth people died at a rate of 2 to 5 times higher than the rest of the country. And you could not blame non-vaccination as the problem. Poverty was the accelerant and race was the accelerant.
But you just said, Reverend Barber, that people were saying they didn't know. But what happened when y'all released that report? My show was one of the very few where y'all got any airtime, because the network said, oh, we busy with Ukraine and Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson. How you only cover 2 stories in 24 hours?
That's right. And you do a groundbreaking study like that, which is why I don't want people to just, because I know we've tired some of mass gathering, but this is different. And the reason we have to do this is to force even the media to take up this issue. Y'all, Roland, if it wasn't for you and some others and a few other, it's like almost like people don't want to talk about it. It's like we just want to ignore 140 million people. 52% of our children are poor and low wealth in this country right now. and 700 people are dying a day from poverty, 250,000 people a year before the pandemic, and none of it has to exist. There is no scarcity, and there's no scarcity of ideas on how to fix it. What we have is a scarcity of moral consciousness and political action to do what needs to be done. And that's why this mass gathering is not a gathering and an end. It is a declaration of, we've been building for 3 years, but it is a declaration that we are not going to be unseen or unheard anymore.
Pam, weigh in, please.
Deeper after the 18th.
Pam, go and weigh in.
What we have that we're battling is the dark money. The courts made it legal for them to dump as much money as they can to buy our laws, buy our electors, to buy everything, our media. So that's what we're fighting. It's not just issues. We're fighting the dark money, the corruption, the lies, the misinformation. So that's what we're out here saying. This is truth. We want accountability. We want morals. We want justice. We want what we were meant to be. A democracy that looks out for each other, that rises from the bottom up. We're not asking for a handout, we're asking for a hand up. And
That's
it's
right.
our democracy, it's our lives. And if we don't, our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids are going to suffer for it. So we have no choice. They have backed us into a corner to where we have got to come out. We cannot stay in this corner anymore. We are dying. We are dying by almost 1 million of us. We cannot be silent anymore, and we won't.
That's right.
I'm organizing my state. If you're in my state, get on a bus. If
That's
you
right.
want change, do more than tweet. Get out and organize. Get out and do something. Stand up. Get out here when you hear these lies and misinformation. Demand your news organizations taking cover what is really important, what is really happening in your state and in your what's going on. What your elected officials are doing, because they're doing it to you. And if you don't stand up and let people know that just because you twist the lie, don't make it truth. It's not honor. It's not dignity. It's not us. We are standing up. We are human beings, and we want to be treated like we're human beings. We are tired of being treated like a commodity that is disposable.
Candace.
Reverend Barber, I'm wondering, how do you get people who may say, I'm not poor, where do I fit into this? How do you get them to understand that the problems that you are marching for really are problems that actually belong to them, no matter what class they're in?
Well, first of all, the cost of keeping people poor and low wage, it cost us $1 trillion. It costs you and me $1 trillion a year, this country, to keep people in poverty instead of fixing it. We lose $330 billion every year when we deny a living wage of $15. If we had passed the $15 living wage in the not the Affordable Care Act, in the rescue plan, and Manchin hadn't blocked it, 41% of all of African Americans would have been raised out of poverty. Think about that, 41% with one vote. And millions of people, and it would have pumped $330 billion into the economy, and you might not be having the kind of inflation and the kind of other problems we're having. So you can't keep poor and low-wealth folk in the ditch without staying there with them. Secondly, we are redefining poverty. See, the government tells you, and this is why a lot of people say, well, it's not talking about me. The government says if you make $12,800 a year as a single person, you're not poor. But that's a lie. The true measure of poverty, you have to start with 200% of the poverty rate. And what we are finding is that when we say 140 million people, we're talking about people who are working poor. We're talking about 73 million women. We're talking about 60% of all black people. 60% of all black people are poor and low wealth in America today. That's 26 million people. We're talking about 30% of all white people. That's 66 million people. So one of the things the 18th is going to do is put a face on it, because we've been lied about what it even looks like. And the fact of the matter, more and more people are starting to come out and say, well, you know, that's me. We were looking one day in one state, people had to work 102 hours a week at $7.25 just to survive. I said to a group of pastors, it's a shame and a disgrace for you to ask people to give to your pastor's anniversary, but then you won't fight for them to have a living wage. So we've got to change the whole narrative. That's why we said June 18th is about a narrative shift. And we got to put the right face on this, because it really is all of us. And to think that here we are in 2022, and we are almost at 50% of this nation living in poverty and low wealth. And if it had not been for the few things we did during the pandemic and then took them away, the poverty level would have gone to over 150 million people. This democracy cannot stand that kind of strain and pressure much longer. Something's going to break. Something's going to give. People are hurting, particularly in the midst of so much opulence. And when they see politicians and Congress people who block from the people who elect them the very things they get free just because they got elected, health care, major wage, pension, they block all of that stuff from the very people that elect them. So this is a different kind of coming out. It is forcing us to see ourselves and to say two things. First of all, that's me. That low wealth is not just going to be defined somebody in a homeless shelter, even though they will be there and a part of it. But then secondly, we're going to be talking about the cost of poverty. The cost, how much it costs us in this country to sustain poverty. I mean, it's kind of an oxymoron, right? You think we are having to pay to sustain poverty. I'll give you one quick point. My sister, I'm glad you raised it. Our military budget, as it currently stands, is more than the next 11 countries combined. If we cut it in half, we'd have more money in military than Russia, Iraq, Iran, China, and North Korea combined. There are studies that say if we just took 5% of that money, because right now we spend 52 cents of every discretionary dollar on the war economy, not for soldiers that are wounded, to the contractors, and less than 15 cents of every discretionary dollar on education, health care, and roads. If we just took 5% of the current military budget and directed it to programs that build up the world rather than blow up the world, one contract to Lockheed Martin would cover every state that has denied Medicaid expansion and would give 4.3 million people health care. Just one contract. So we've got to change the whole narrative around this, and that's why June 18th is a major, major step in doing that.
All right, then. Well, we certainly look forward to that. We'll be broadcasting live from there. Pam, thank you very much. Keep up the fight. And for people out there who think that having these conversations, the show doesn't matter, I can't remember her name, but I know she's one of your tri-state leaders. She was a white woman who was watching this show. She had never heard of Reverend Barber, had never heard of the Poor People's Campaign, but she saw him on the show, and that's what she called that day and joined the Poor People's Campaign there in West Virginia. I forgot her name. We had her on the show a couple of months ago. But again, so for somebody who's watching, y'all think, oh, Roland don't talk to black people. No. Non-black people watch the show, but it's the content they're listening to and being moved by.
Can I say one quick thing?
Yeah.
I know you got to. Anybody that's claiming to stand for black folk, and we're talking few, but I want to talk black just a minute. And you have 60.7% of black folk living in poverty and low wealth, and that's not topping your agenda. What you doing? And if you're not connecting the fight for voting rights to the fight for economic rights, what are you doing? And somebody said to me the other day, well, Reverend Barber, nobody wants to hear all those sad stories. We need to have a fun thing. I said, that's our damn problem. We're having too much fun rather than being engaged in the fight. This is a fight because we're in a crisis of civilization and a crisis of democracy. And it's going to be waged with everybody, black, white, brown, yellow, young, old, gay, straight, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Hindu, people of faith, people not of faith. But you know what the young folks saying? We coming, and we're not going back, and we're not going to be unseen or unheard anymore.
And that's it. We appreciate it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Doc. God bless.
Thank you.
Hey, Pam.
Thanks, Pam. Keep up the fight. Folks, going to a break. We come back on Marketplace 7. We're talking to...
Thank you for being on our YouTube channel, One Race, Human Race, All Human. Today is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022.